It's time for the Full Press Hockey Podcast with Jim Biringer and Bruce Zeman.
Shoots! He scores!
And now, with a trip around the National Hockey League, here's Jim and Bruce.
Welcome to the Full Press Hockey Podcast. I'm your host, Jim Biringer, rocking and rolling alongside my legendary Hall of Fame tag team partner, Bruce Zeman. We're back again. This show is presented by Betalytics. 25% off using the code FPH24. 25% off monthly and yearly subscriptions. Get your edge on the betting game. We've been hitting winners all Stanley Cup playoffs long, including Game 5. Took the over on Evan Rodriguez shot total. He had a goal in that game, too. We also took Evan Bouchard point total. Hit that early in the first period. Guys, stay tuned for more from Full Press Hockey. But we're talking about big news. June 19th, day off in the Stanley Cup Final. You and I have been on this train for a long time, and it finally happened. The New Jersey Devils landed Jacob Markstrom, their number one goalie. Bruce, welcome to the show.
Jim, thanks for having me. It is very big news. Tom Fitzgerald made it happen finally, and a new era in New Jersey. And one thing I will say, much, much higher expectations for this upcoming season.
Absolutely. You get a goaltender of Markstrom's ability. You've seen what he did in Calgary. Now you pair him with a Jake Allen that can take 30 games away from him, right? You have this pair for a season, right? And you have it on a very reasonable contract. So the full trade goes this way. Jacob Markstrom to New Jersey for Kevin Ball and a 2025 first-round top 10 protected pick. The Flames retain 31% of Markstrom's salary. So basically, the $6 million he's making goes to about $4.25 million for the Devils for the next couple of seasons. And if he performs well, and he's eligible next July 1st for an extension. So if things work out this season, you sign him to a short-term deal. But this guy, this was the player that they needed. This was the difference maker in net that the Devils needed. Think about it. We talked about it on this podcast going back to last offseason. Missed opportunity, the needs of this team, so many different things. What did the Devils need? Biggest need. We always went back to the goaltender. They needed a number one goaltender. You just couldn't roll the same stuff out over and over again. And Tom Fitzgerald was kicked in the butt about this. I have multiple sources telling me that before Sheldon Keefe took this job, he basically told Tom Fitzgerald, the only way I'm taking this job is if you get me a number one goaltender.
Yeah, and I heard that a bunch of from different sources as well. Listen, we both criticized Tom Fitzgerald for not doing it last year. He did it. You got to give him props for making it happen. I think it's long overdue. I think they kind of wasted last season by not making it happen. But as you said a moment ago, they made it happen. And I don't think they gave up too much. And I'm going to get to that in a second. But again, much, much higher expectations this year for New Jersey. And there's no reason they shouldn't go deep into the playoffs.
This is why you need to get Markstrom. This is what we talked about last year. This is where you and I were on multiple shows, different shows. Shout out to Rob Peterson for having me on his show. I've been on Mike Richards' show, been everywhere. Been on Sirius XM talking about it too. The Devils, if they had a number one goaltender last year with the defense that they had, they would have made the playoffs, and they probably could have made a deep run. Now, I've seen all the criticism, this isn't going to help their defense. It's going to help their defense because the Devils now have a guy that's going to stop the puck consistently. They didn't have that last year, and you saw the team play differently when Jake Allen got there. Now, history. The Devils and Flames have been talking about this since midseason. You and I have been on this since midseason. Shout out to Rob Peterson for giving me credit about this on his show yesterday. Markstrom wanted to go to New Jersey. He was willing to waive his no-trade clause to come to New Jersey at the deadline. There was a deal in place. The Flames didn't do it. They backed off. Thought they could still get in contention and make the playoffs. They didn't. The Devils were always going to address their goaltending this offseason. Both teams were going to re-engage. They've been trade partners before. Look what happened. The Sharon Govich for Toffoli trade. They've had history before. Go back to the legendary 1990 draft. The Devils and Flames swapped draft picks. Flames took Trevor Kidd. Devils took Martin Brodeur. I think we know who won that deal. So they've had a history. But coming into this offseason, you knew the Devils and Flames were going to re-engage in trade talks. And I know everybody talks about other teams were involved. No, other teams were interested. But Jacob Markstrom wanted to go to one place and one place only. It was New Jersey. His mind was made up. They had brought it to him in March, and he was willing to go there. And the way he's talked about it, he was happy to be there. He's talked to guys who've been here, and he wanted to win. And, Craig Conroy came out like before this trade happened. Oh, it's not an ultimatum. Buddy, when you say at the end of your year press conference, you're not sure if your goaltender's coming back, he's getting traded, and he's already made his demand that he's not staying in Calgary, because through the media and what he said and his looks on his face, he was not happy that he didn't get traded in March.
No, you're 100% right. And it was an ultimatum. I mean, that had to be kind of awkward in the locker room after you tell him he's getting traded. He's told his teammates he's getting traded, and then it doesn't happen. Talk about awkward. Very, very awkward. You can only wonder what that did to the room there, right? I mean, we don't know what went on in the room and everything, but that could not have been a fun place to be after that didn't happen. But you're right. I mean, the Devils made the trade that we've been talking about it forever. And now there's a couple of other things Tom Fitzgerald has to do. They need another defenseman. They need some physicality. But he addressed their number one need. Props to him for finally making it happen. And if you look at it, and I'm going to take some heat for this, I actually was off the hockey boards yesterday, and I was texting you last night. I have to say this. Devils fans in particular, you've got to understand, okay, a couple of things. Number one, a team is not going to give you their number one goalie without getting something back significant. First of all, I like Kevin Ball. He's not a top 4 defenseman, at least yet. He's probably a 5 or 6 at best, and a number one pick. I think the Devils came out fine in this deal, and there were people on the boards, and again, you and I were texting about this last night. He's too old. He's too this. The guy is still in his prime. You're not signing him for 8 years. Okay. The Devils are coming into the win now window. And I don't know how you feel about this, Jim, but if you had gone after Linus Ullmark or UC Saros, I think you would have given up considerably more. I think this is a good deal for New Jersey. And again, we criticized them for not making it happen, but today Tom Fitzgerald made the deal he had to make, and so he gets props for that in my book.
Yeah, look, you always were going to give up something, right? We've talked about this on the program how many times. You have to give up something to get something. They gave up a first-round pick in 2025. Very good. It's top 10 protected. God forbid the Devils don't have a great season, which with Markstrom, I don't see that happening. I think because of the upgrades, where else they're going to go. But you still have your 2024 first-round pick, the 10th overall, which you can use to get a defenseman, a scoring winger, make another trade, make it on deadline day, right? So you still have that in the holster, right? And I agree with you. With Saros, with Ullmark, especially Ullmark. Let's look at Boston's side of this. Say they went after Ullmark. We don't know if he was willing to go to New Jersey because he had a 16-team modified no-trade clause. Also, the Bruins were going to want a center. They need a number one center. That means Dawson Mercer might have gone. Maybe one of your other prospects would have gone as well, who could have been a number one center. So, and things have worked out for the Bruins when they've made trades with the New Jersey Devils or picked guys off of waivers. Look at Boquist. Look at what Zacha's doing up there as well. As far as Nashville, you knew what the deal was going to be on the table. Plus, again, 8 times 8.5 is what Saros was looking for. Is that something, Tom Fitzgerald wanted to do? It didn't seem like you want to do that with Connor Hellebuck, even though Hellebuck's definitely the better of the goalies there. You get Markstrom now. You give up Kevin Ball. Okay, you give up Kevin Ball, but look what Igor Sharangovich did in Calgary, right? He thrived in that system. Maybe we see the best of Kevin Ball in Calgary with a different coach, right? So it's a double-edged sword. You don't want to give up a guy like that. But you know what? Kudos for Tom Fitzgerald to make it happen. He needed to make it happen. And now he's still got another bullet in that holster of his that he can use to upgrade this team because, like you said, they still need physicality. They still need another defenseman. They need a scoring winger. They still have a lot of priorities this team needs this offseason. But he got the number one need done, which is the goaltender.
Absolutely. And again, I think he's going to come to New Jersey. I mean, he said it yesterday. I was watching one of his pressers. He's motivated to be here. He wants to win, and I think he's going to have a monster year this year. And if he has a good year, maybe you re-up him for. I mean, he's got 2 years left, right, on his deal.
He's got 2 years left on his deal at $4 million, which is what it's $6 million, but the Flames are eating like a $1.875 million of the deal. But say he does have a good season. Who says you can't extend him for 2 or 3 years, right?
Yeah, I mean, absolutely. I mean, you're not making an 8-year commitment to a 34-year-old goaltender. But again, we saw what Marty did when he was older. I'm not saying Jacob Markstrom is Marty, but it's not going to hurt that Marty's in the organization and work with him on some things. And again, you get 3 or 4 good years out of him. And listen, I'm about winning, and I'm about winning now. And I'll tell you what, if Markstrom is able to get the Devils a cup in the next 4 years, very few people will care that he's 34 years old.
100%. Nobody will care that he's 34 years old. No one will care, right? Like, because if you get a Stanley Cup, that's all that matters, right? And this Devils team is in this window now to win, right? They need to get the goaltender. They needed to get so many things, but the goalie was the number one thing. You needed somebody to go with Jake Allen, and you got it. And it was Markstrom from the start. Again, he was the difference maker this team. Look what happened. Go back to when the Calgary Flames were into New Jersey. And the night Jacob Markstrom played for Calgary, that night against New Jersey, he basically just showed why he was going to be the guy that the Devils needed to get. And they got it done. And look, Flames management, Don Maloney, whatever, you could talk about that stuff. By the way, Don Maloney was down in Florida for Game 5. And that was the night this deal all came together. And then it came together. Says something about why Don Maloney shouldn't be involved in trades. But that's just me speculating here. So it's not concrete proof. So I don't want people like clipping this thing and saying, oh, Jim Biringer said, no. But I will say this. It's a good deal. It's a fair deal. Again, I will come back to it. Even though there were other teams interested, Jacob Markstrom controlled the narrative with the no movement clause. He wanted to go to one place only, and it was New Jersey Devils. That's your ultimatum, and that's why he's here.
Well, the other thing for me too, Jim, is that says a lot to me as not only as a fan, as an analyst, but the guys in the room. I mean, when someone says, I want to play here, that's someone that I want on my team, on my roster. I think he's going to come in very motivated. I think he wants to stick it to the Flames for doing that to him last year. And maybe over the course of his career, not getting him what he felt he needed to win. And I think all 3 of those goalies, whoever it was, whether it was Saros, Ullmark, or now it is Markstrom, I think all 3 of those goalies are going to come in very, very motivated. I expect all 3 of them to have great years, but I think Markstrom is going to be very, very motivated to bring some hardware back to New Jersey this coming season.
I agree with you on that. I think Markstrom's going to be motivated. We talked about when Sheldon Keefe got hired, how motivated he's going to be. The players are motivated because of the disappointing season. And look, we talked about this before we put a bow on the New Jersey Devils and move to the other big headline of the day. The Devils have other needs. Defensively, they need help. They need scoring. They need physicality. If you're looking on defense, I'm looking at a couple of guys that are free agents coming out of Carolina. One is Brett Pesce, and another guy is Brady Shea. I think those 2 guys, at the right price, would be good fits for the New Jersey Devils.
I think you're 100% correct. I mean, I think Tom Fitzgerald has got to look at what he's got in his stable. I mean, and there's a couple of things you have to take a look at. Are there some prospects that they want to make the team this year? Is Dougie Hamilton 100% healthy? Are they going to have Simon Nemec play with? Who are they going to have him play with? They've got to figure all that out. But those are two defensemen that I think for the right price would be a great fit in New Jersey. And again, to me, with this move yesterday, another thing happened, Jim, which I guess we'll get into now. Tom Fitzgerald has made New Jersey a destination that players want to come now. And now with Markstrom, if I'm a free agent or, even a trade, somebody that may get traded, I'm looking at New Jersey as a destination because if we take a step back to the Sheldon Keefe hiring, all right, a lot of people, including a bunch of your sources and who are some of my same sources, were saying that the Devils' job was probably the plum job of the coaching world because they were only one or two pieces away from making a deep run. Well, it's the same thing for players because now the Devils have got that goalie that they need. And, maybe one of those players is one of the final pieces they need to compete for this cup.
Yeah, I agree with you. And I think it started last season, right? You kept Jesper Bratt around. You kept Timo Meier around. You bring in Tyler Toffoli. Guys were excited to come here. Guys are talking about winning culture, new culture. So it started last offseason. Tom Fitzgerald's been doing it since he got Dougie Hamilton to sign here. So when you see top free agents coming here, that's a good thing, right? And you're building something in return and you're building a product because let's be honest, for how long we've talked about this on the show, and I put something up on fullpresshockey.com. Devils are finally a destination because for years, nobody wanted to come here. No free agents wanted to play in Newark. No one wanted to be here. Now guys want to come here. And, I'm just going through some other defensemen and everything. And I'm seeing Shea, Montour, Matt Roy. I've talked about, here's a couple of names that the Devils were linked to. Probably you heard the same thing. Okay, back in November, Nikita Zadorov wanted out. Chris Tanev was looking, he was probably going to get traded from Calgary. The Devils were in on both those guys. You may have to overpay for Zadorov, but he's friends with Markstrom. Maybe Markstrom gets in his ear and say, hey, I'm here. You want to come here? They're building something. He wants to win. He could fit in because he brings the physicality that the Devils need. He's still got an offensive punch, but he's a good, solid defenseman who I think New Jersey could use. Same with Chris Tanev. I think those two guys would definitely add something to that top four that the Devils need.
Well, you're absolutely right. I mean, if you look at what, a player saying something to another player means, I mean, the only reason Jake Allen came to New Jersey from multiple sources that I've talked to is because Marty asked him to waive his no-trade clause to come here.
That's 100% correct.
So if you have Jacob Markstrom saying to some of these players, hey, listen, I'm here now. They want to win here. They're serious. And under Tom Fitzgerald, we've criticized him for some things, but one of the things that he deserves a lot of props for, the players that are here are happy here. Once they get here, they're taken care of. They make them feel important. And that's a whole new culture that Tom Fitzgerald built. We've criticized him, but you got to give him props for building that type of culture. They want to come here, and the opportunity to play with Jack Hughes and Nico and Timo Meier and now one of the best goalies in the world, that's got to make this a destination spot for any free agent player.
So I know, back before Tyler Toffoli got traded at the deadline, which was something he wasn't happy about going to Winnipeg, he was the Devils' leading goal scorer. There's kind of multiple there's conflicting reports about whether the Devils can bring him back if he wants to come back. The fact that he talked to Markstrom about going there, maybe the New Jersey Devils can re-engage in those conversations and maybe get him to a place where he's happy term-wise and they're happy term-wise and dollar-wise as well. Because let's be honest, the Devils need a scoring winger. They don't have that finisher. They need that finisher. They have too many playmakers. They need a finisher. Toffoli was finishing, and maybe he comes back and, they make everything all good again, because I don't think they're going to get Sam Reinhart, Jake Getzel. Stamkos is staying in Tampa. Kane, I don't know. Maybe you can land Kane. Maybe. You never know. Patrick Kane, I don't know. Jonathan Marchessault feels like he's going to stay in Vegas. I'm looking up and down the lineup. Maybe you get Teravainen and Bertuzzi, guys like that. Maybe a Jake DeBrusk out of Boston. But they need a finisher. And maybe you figure out a way to make it work again with Tyler Toffoli.
Well, again, this trade yesterday changes a lot of things. It changes the perception. It changes the lineup. And maybe it changes the perception of the team from some of these other players, because I think that, yesterday afternoon, once Markstrom became a Devil, I think that the New Jersey Devils became a much more desirable location for a free agent than they did the day before. Because, listen, and I've said this a bunch of times, but it's important because I was a big critic of Tom Fitzgerald before he made this trade, okay? Did what he had to do yesterday, and now if I'm some of these other players, some of the ones that you just mentioned, not really hard for him to go to some of these players or their agents and say, look, we're serious about winning. I proved that. And, I mean, if you look, you go down the list of some of the players that you named, you want to win a cup? Because, I mean, what that says to me is they are looking to win the Stanley Cup in the next 3 years.
Absolutely, 100%.
So do you want to win? And again, on some of the boards and everything like that, I'm old school when it comes to negotiating. And excuse me, and I think you can have, you're a frequenter to the to the Rock, and I've gone a couple of times. Now I'm in Delaware. I'm going to go a lot more next year. But I mean, seriously, all you've got to do is you walk into that building, and you look up and you say, you want some of these banners? You want to be part of the next series because they're coming.
They are coming. It's taking time.
They're coming, and so. How much do you need? I mean, I get, and again, people have to remember this is absolutely a business before anything else, but you get to a certain point with some of those names you mentioned. I mean, you've made millions of dollars already. I'd rather win.
I'd rather win, but that's just me because I'm a winner, right?
Yeah, well,
so, it's one of those things that, to me, if I'm a player, maybe I take a little less to come to New Jersey and help push these young guys over, right? And look, we know they need defense, scoring, physicality. Maybe they could get a Pat Maroon. Maybe you get a guy like Tyler Bertuzzi that comes in that brings both, right? You need that, and you could see that with Florida. Edmonton's kind of battling back with that too. But the New Jersey Devils finally get their guy. They get Markstrom, but that wasn't the only trade of the day.
Yeah,
it was not. And you mentioned this on our Full Press Hockey Weekly show in Game 5 for our preview. You brought up Pierre-Luc Dubois. And Pierre-Luc Dubois, kudos to Rob Blake for getting out of a bad contract. He trades Pierre-Luc Dubois to Washington for Darcy Kuemper straight up. Congratulations, Rob Blake, because that might have just saved your job in LA.
Yeah, it very well might have. I mean, he was not happy there. I heard that from a bunch of folks. He's coming to Washington, which I think will certainly help them. And, that may be like the sleeper move of the offseason, not only getting rid of a bad contract for LA, but, PLD, if he's motivated, I mean, he could be a very, very big pickup for the Capitals, especially playing on a team with Ovechkin. That could be a big move. You're right.
That could be a huge move, right? And look, we've criticized Pierre-Luc Dubois on this show. And rightfully so. Look, and I've talked to guys in LA, and yesterday I was talking with a couple of guys in LA too, and they were saying, look, he said all the right things after the season. He said, he was going to come out, have a great off season, get back into it, get back into shape, get back into putting the work into the game. He's had issues in Columbus, had issues in Winnipeg, had issues in LA. Now, LA's style, if you look at the way they've played, didn't really fit what Dubois was doing and his game. And it's similar when you saw it in Columbus under Tortorella. He did have a couple of good seasons in Winnipeg, but he just didn't want to stay there. He goes to Washington. Spencer Carberry, younger coach. But I think the way Washington plays is going to help his game. And if he's going to be playing with Ovechkin or whoever, name a couple of guys, Dylan Strome, whoever's there, you're going to see a better Pierre-Luc Dubois. And I think you're going to see a better Pierre-Luc Dubois anyway, because after the dismal season that he had in LA, that can't happen again in Washington, not for the next 7 seasons at $8.5 million. And the fact that they got out of that contract, they pick up Darcy Kuemper, their new goalie. He's at $5.25. They save a lot of money on the cap, $3.25 million. So they have room to work. You have Darcy Kuemper and Big Save Dave. Let's see if Kuemper can re-find his form. Look, I criticized Darcy Kuemper when he's in Colorado because Colorado won the Cup in spite of Kuemper, not because of him. Let's see what he can do in LA, because LA is going to have to go through either Edmonton, Calgary, Vegas in the first round again. So let's see if Kuemper can get his form back, because he just the style that Washington played didn't help him. Now the Kings play a little bit more defensively. That'll help Kuemper. But I like the move for both teams, and especially for Rob Blake, because he gets out of a bad contract.
I agree with you. That was a no bueno contract. That's
No.
what you call it. But I mean, if you take a look at PLD for a second, he's going to be another player who's motivated. I mean, this is his 4th team. He's
third in 3 years, by the way.
Right.
Third in 3 years.
Yeah, so he's going to be 26 years old, and this is his 4th team. And so to me, this is kind of his big chance to kind of do something, because he's never scored more than 63 points, and he did that in 23 with Winnipeg. So they're expecting more. And Kemper, you're right. The Kings are gonna play a much more defensive style, much more solidly in front of him. So I think it is a win-win for both teams. But for me, the upside potentially for the Capitals could be enormous.
Right, because now you have a center going forward with Dylan Strome. You have all these guys there. Maybe your retool on the fly doesn't take as long, because you know what the motivation in Washington is to get Ovechkin to pass Gretzky's goal record. Again, they made the playoffs by the hair of their chinny chin chin, because the Eastern Conference, nobody wanted it. I don't see them getting back to the playoffs, because you're relying on Charlie Lindgren and somebody else to be in your goal. You're getting up there. TJ Oshie, from people I've talked with, shout out to Ted Starkey, who's on the show as well. He believes that Oshie's probably going to be on LTIR. He may go to Robidas Island because of injuries. So that could open up some money for the Capitals to make even more moves. But still, you look at it. Yeah, I agree. I think this could be good. Let's see if he can find his form again, because when you're bouncing around like this, there's the narrative of when things don't go your way, you become pouty and moody and sucky, to use a term. And that's what it's been like for Pierre-Luc Dubois. And it just doesn't feel like, he can battle through that part of it. So he's going to have to figure it out now, because it's now on the player, and he's got to show it. And I think he will.
Well, one of the things that I wanted to add to, since we're talking about the Capitals for a second, and I'll throw this out to you. And and when Chris Wassel joins us again, who I loved being with last time, what a great analyst he is, great guy too. I'm almost wondering, and I've thought this for the last season or so. I mean, this thing with Ovechkin and passing Gretzky, I personally think this is becoming a distraction to the team.
I think so too. I think you can tell, because now he's, it depends on when he wants to stop. If he's not going to do it, look, he caught fire second half of the year. If he didn't catch fire, he was going to be a long ways away from Wayne. Now he's getting closer again. You wonder, what his motivation's like and everything after that dismal performance in the playoffs that they had. So, yeah, I think it's a distraction, because everybody knows what they're doing in Washington. It's all about Gretzky's record. It's not winning a Stanley Cup. It's about him passing Wayne. So I think it's a distraction, and I agree with you.
I mean, and that's not necessarily criticism. It's just that, they're not winning the Stanley Cup last year. So, I mean, once they get past this 894 mark, do they start doing what they got to do? Because, there are 25, 26 other players on that team.
Right, exactly. And the same thing goes in Pittsburgh, what the edict is. Got to win with Crosby, Malkin, all this stuff. They got to make moves.
Which is also not going to happen.
Which is also not going to happen, because the Penguins are not making the playoffs again. I hate to say it. Because they can't get out of that Jari contract. That's awful. So, look, those were the two major trades. I said to somebody yesterday, it felt like that June day when Taylor Hall went for Adam Larson, PK Subban went for Shea Weber. The only thing was missing was the Steven Stamkos announcement that he was extending in Tampa. That's the only thing that was missing on June 19th. But we did have a waiver claim. San Jose picked up Barclay Goodrow, who was placed on waivers the day of Game 5 of the Stanley Cup Final. The Rangers are trying to get out of this contract, and the Sharks pick it up, and they help the Rangers out clear $3.64 million over the next 3 years. Look, I know San Jose is going to be a bad team, but to have a guy like Goudreau, who's been there, won cups, been to finals, a veteran presence, he's going to be a motivated player. He's not happy that he went to San Jose, that San Jose picked him up, because he apparently, according to Larry Brooks, shout out to Larry Brooks, New York Post, that he had San Jose on his no trade list, and he's none happy that he got picked up. But look, I think he's going to be a motivated player. He's going to help this young team. They got a lot of young players on this team. We know this team's going to be bad. Ryan Warsawski's the new head coach there. This team's going to be a long ways away to what the San Jose Sharks were when it was the California death trip, as they like to call it. When you had to go through LA, San Jose, and Anaheim. So I think the Goodrow pickup is great. The Rangers, we'll get to them in a minute, but I like what the Sharks did here. They also added Ty Dellandrea from the Dallas Stars. So I like what the Sharks are doing here. I know they're not going to be a good hockey team next year, but they add some veteran players in there that are going to be helpful, and maybe they get something for Delandry at the deadline.
Well, they could also do something with Goodrow because I think he's going to get he's going to get a chance to play in a leadership role there. I mean, he only had 12 points last year, so you're right. He does have a lot to prove. And he's only 30 years old. He'll be 31. But I had heard also that he wasn't too happy to be going back because San Jose is not going to be a good team next year. But, let's see what they're going to do because, I mean, Mike Greer is trying to make changes there. He's trying to make the best of what is really a bad situation. And I'm kind of curious to see what he's able to do.
Me too. Like, I know they're going to take Macklin Celebrini #1 overall. They have Will Smith there. They have a couple other, Eklund is there as well. They have a nice young crop of players that are going to be good. We'll see if Celebrini goes back to college. I don't think he will, but if he does, that's good for his development because we know what the Sharks are going to be. They're going to be a bad team, and he always can come up later in the year after his college season is over. But from the Rangers side of things, right? So they get rid of Goodrow's contract, who performed well, by the way, in the playoffs. And shame on their head coach for not playing him more in the Eastern Conference Final because he was one of their impactful players in the first couple of rounds and in that series. You look at, so they clear the cap space. They signed Capo Caco to his qualifying offer. He's a player that's going to have to prove a lot. Either he's going to be in their top 6 or they're going to have to move him. And that's a tradable contract. 1 year at $2.4 million. Teams are going to look to maybe get him out of New York and see if a change of scenery will help him. But they also have to sign Igor Shesterkin, who's eligible for an extension. And we know what that number is, right? It probably starts with 11. And he wants to be the highest paid goaltender in the world. You and I haven't talked about this, but I've put this out there, myself on X, Twitter, other places that I've been on, and I said this is Henrik Lundqvist 2.0 for the Rangers. They're relying too much on Igor Shesterkin, and now it's going to cost them.
Well, it is going to cost them, and I'm going to disagree with you here. I think you may be looking at 12, maybe 12 plus. For him.
I think you're going to get 12 plus, but I think the number starts at 11. He's going to be like, no, I want more than Carey Price, Sergei Bobrovsky, Andrei Vasilevsky, all these guys. Because you're asking me to do all this in the playoffs again, and you're not scoring. And I think there are going to be other changes with the Rangers, too. I mean, everybody asked me about Jacob Trouba. He is the captain, but who says you can't buy out your captain or trade him? Because they got to do something on that defense. Their core, their guys are just not showing up in the playoffs.
Yeah, and I mean, I think that 11 is maybe a starting point.
Right.
But I mean, again, Shesterkin's probably the best goalie in the world. And it is going to cost you significantly. But again, if you're looking at what Chris Drury is going to pay, I mean, is that, in your opinion, is that, an 11 or 12 times 8?
Yeah, it's 12 times 8. And you're going to have to live with 12 times 8 unless you can get him at a discount. But I don't know if he's going to want to take a discount. I mean,
that's almost $100 million.
I mean, look, with the cap going up, the way it's been going up, projecting to go up, he's going to eat about 14% of the cap. Okay, you could probably live with that because he's going to be your goalie for the next little while. So I think that I think it's a good move for them. But again, the negotiations are underway. Look, he's eligible to sign an extension July 1st. Does it happen? We'll see. But again, the Rangers have other needs that they have to take care of because their offense went away against the Florida Panthers.
Yeah, I mean, I think the Rangers are going to have – I think that's going to be an interesting negotiation because I think Shesterkin knows what he's worth. I think he's going to set the market. And, it may be a case with him where he may be waiting to see what the Rangers say they're going to do too because, listen, the players know. You and I are players, right? They know what's going on. And you see when – and we've heard many tales about this over the years, players going to management and saying – especially, leaders on teams saying, we need this and teams to their credit taking in the input. I mean, you've got a GM for a reason, but I mean, the players know what's going on. And so to me, it's going to be interesting because if the Rangers don't make some of these moves, does Shesterkin's price go up? Yes.
I think so too. I think his price definitely goes up. So something to watch come the offseason. Same with Stamkos. I think that gets finished, though. I think that'll be announced July 1. They'll figure that one out, or maybe even before because there's the window there. A Hedman's due for an extension as well. Boston's going to be looking for a center. I think they'll be in the Elias Lindholm discussions, maybe the Chandler Stevenson, because they still need a number one center. Where does Linus Ullmark go? Does he end up going to like Ottawa, a doubtful Toronto? Because I don't think Boston, Toronto will ever make a trade, but they've done it before. So never say never in this business. Ottawa wants to move out their goaltender. So it's definitely going to be interesting offseason for sure, because there's so many teams trying to make moves. What does Vancouver do? They want to get on Jake Getzel. Carolina's got a lot of players that they need to keep. Marty Natchez, is he going to get traded? Just, a lot of time. It's a great time of year because the silly season is upon us.
Yeah, and again, for some of those names that you mentioned, I mean, with Markstrom and Kemper off the market, there's a couple of top-tier goaltenders left. And although it's still, the player still controls in a lot of cases where they go or where they don't go. If I'm Linus Ullmark, I think you got to be careful now, because to me anyway, maybe just because I'm biased, and I think you'd agree with me here, New Jersey was a pretty desirable destination to go because of either a commitment to being close to winning. We've heard from Ullmark that I've heard from different people that he nixed the trade to LA last year. There's certain teams that he doesn't want to go to. At what point does a team say, you know what, this dude's high maintenance? Maybe
they could, but then again, with Jeremy Swayman do an extension and probably going to get 8 times 8, a little more than that.
At least.
Now the Bruins have $13 million tied up in 2 goalies. Now, granted, it's the last year of Markstrom, so the $5 million you can move maybe later on. But still, I think a team like Colorado, who's desperate for a goaltender because they need to upgrade over Georgiev. I hate to say it. If you go Georgiev and Ullmark, maybe you get something there. But I think that's something they have to look at. And Colorado also needs a number 2 center. They hope they have that. But again, you don't know when Gabriel Landeskog's coming back. But again, I think, or if he comes back, but again, I think there's not many destinations now. We know, again, Ottawa wants to upgrade over Korpisalo. Does Ullmark want to go there? There's not too many teams now in that win now mode. New Jersey was one of them. Colorado's another one. LA solved their problem. Man, there's not too many other spots outside of Toronto that's in that like win now category. Maybe a place like Detroit he could go. Maybe they upgrade there. That could be a place for him. But again, it's where he wants to go. And again, the 16-team no trade list drops to 15 on July 1st. We'll see if he gets moved, but because the Bruins need a number 1 center, and if they don't get Elias Lindholm, they're going to have to look for somebody else. So I think that's a name you're going to have to watch moving forward.
Well, where do you think he winds up?
I think maybe Colorado. Colorado. I just don't know if Toronto, I don't know if Boston wants to help out their rival get better.
Well, here's something else to throw out there. I mean, if you talk about the collapse that they had last season against Florida, I mean, the Toronto media, and you know this, you've been there.
Yep.
Right? The Toronto media is a lot more vicious than the Boston media is. I mean, listen, for anybody that doesn't know this about the NHL media, the NHL center, it's not Montreal, it's Toronto.
Right, it is.
You want to talk about playing in a fishbowl? I mean, so I guess at some point, I mean, maybe his representatives are saying, like, listen, we need to make, if they're going to move him, we need to make this deal. Because, I mean, to me, and again, maybe it's me being biased or just being, a fan here. I mean, playing for New Jersey is much more desirable for playing in Ottawa, which is much further away from winning anything.
Right, I agree with you on that. 100% agree.
Even Colorado is much further along with the pieces that they have. I mean, that may be a good fit, but again, whether it's Markstrom or any of these other, what people have to understand is, yes, it's great that they've got these players, but now we'll look at New Jersey again for a second. The expectations on this team next year are going to be, for me right now, they're conference finals.
And they have to be, right? They have to be conference final because of what you just added and the other pieces that you're going to add. Because you look at it, right? Florida's back at the Stanley Cup Final. They're a win away from the Stanley Cup. Edmonton's where they need to be finally. right? And do they force a game 7, which is a possibility? You never know. It feels more and more like that's probably happening. But again, that's why they played the game. By the way, we talked about this on the pregame show. Connor McDavid locked up the Conn Smythe Trophy. I don't want to hear about it anymore. Like, I was trying to make a case for anybody on Florida. I can't do it anymore. It's Connor McDavid. Period. Discussions closed. He's the 3rd player in NHL history in the Stanley Cup playoffs to have 40-plus points. He just passed Wayne Gretzky's record in 1993, and that's when Wayne was kind of towards the back end of his career when he put up 40 points with the Kings. He's 6 away from passing Gretzky's all-time mark of 47 in 1985. He's a couple points away from passing Mario's 1991 mark. The dude's the Conn Smythe Trophy winner. He's the best player in the playoffs, the best player in the world. Period. Discussions closed. And if he has another game, like he's put back-to-back 4-point games. He's at 8 points in 2 elimination games. He backed up his words. Now they got to go win another game, and they're going back to South Florida, where you and I have said, and Chris said it, anything can happen in Game 7.
Well, I think Bobrovsky played himself out of the Conn Smythe Trophy with 2 terrible games. And I don't know if you've heard this, but I was talking to some folks yesterday, and again, this is purely my take in this. I don't want people saying, Bruce said this, everything like that. He looked shot after getting just shell-shocked, in the 8-1 loss, and then it was 3-0 Edmonton. He looked to me like a deer in the headlights.
The defense for Florida is not playing well. They're not helping him out. But now he's given up 9 goals now in his last, 5-6 periods, dating back to the 3rd period of Game 3. That's not a good, actually more than that. And I think about it, actually, he's given up 11 goals in his last 6 periods. So I don't know about that. Look, the Panthers have pushed back. Let's see if they can build off the momentum they had in the 3rd period where they just took it to Edmonton. Maybe they carry that over to Game 6. I just don't know if Edmonton's going to want to lose the cup on home ice, right? That's a motivating factor to keep your season alive, to have somebody else lift the cup in your building. There's a reason why it doesn't happen often there. Look, why do I have a feeling this is going 7?
Well, let me just put this out there, and I'm going to give myself a little props here because I called this.
Yeah, you did.
I did not think that Florida was going to win Game 5. I don't think they're going to win Game 6. I think Edmonton's going to blow them out. And I think right now Game 7 is a coin flip. I love the Panthers captain. I'd love to have him on my team, but here's the thing. You got to do something to right the ship, because I don't know what your thoughts are, but I could see this being 4-0 Edmonton at the end of the 1st period in Game 6, because that I've been to that arena twice, and it is going to be seismic, the noise level at that rink.
It's going to be seismic. Look, I think Edmonton's going to, the first 5 to 10 minutes of that game is going to be huge, and more on the pregame show tomorrow, because we will do a Game 6 pregame show. But to me, I think this is, if Florida's got to survive the first 5 to 10 minutes, if they can keep it close and they don't trail 3-0 again or down 3-1 after 1, if they can get it, if it's 1-0 or 1-1 tied after the period, that's a win on the road. And then you could still play your game. But if you get behind again and you take stupid penalties and go to the box and give up shorthanded goals again in the 1st period, you're not winning a hockey game. Sorry, you're just not doing it. So the consensus around the media when I was down there for Game 5 was we all believe it's coming back to South Florida, but you have to play the game, right? You think about it, you have this opportunity, you give yourself this lead, but you don't want to be on the other side of a historic loss.
No, and again, to just bring up Connor McDavid, listen, he was taking a lot of heat early part of the season, or series rather, but you got to give him props for what he's done in the last couple of games. He's the best player in the world. He showed why, and I just expect to have him. Maybe I'm hypothesizing here. I could see him having a goal and 5 assists in a 7-1 rout
I could see it too. Like, look, Corey Perry has said it after Game 5. He puts this team on his back, and he's showing why he's the best player in the world. Period. Discussion's closed.
Well,
so
let me throw something out to you then, because I was talking to some of my friends in Florida yesterday. Bobrovsky has not looked good in the last 2 games.
No.
He comes out in Game 6 and gets shelled. What do you do?
I think you just got to go back to him. I don't know if you could throw Stolarz in there. It's the Stanley Cup Final, man.
No, I absolutely hear you. But again,
look, this isn't 2011 where I was pounding the train. You don't have it's not like you have Corey Schneider as your backup, right?
No, you don't.
Corey Schneider should have played Game 6 because of what he had done in relief in Boston and the way he's played in Boston in his career. You knew you had 2 chances when you were Vancouver. To play Schneider, I think they would have won. I think they would have won the Cup in 6 because of how well he played in Boston in relief. We'll never know. We know what happened that year. But you can't go to Stolarz. You just got to – look, the Panthers' defense is just getting beat by McDavid. They're just watching him play hockey right now. They're just watching him. So you got to change some things to get back to containing him. I think McDavid's found that other gear. He's put teams on his back, going back to his days playing at the U18s, back to the World Juniors, World Championships. Connor McDavid is the best player in the world, and he's having his Michael Jordan moment right now. And if he's going to continue to play like that, I don't think you can stop him. I don't think so.
Not only do I think you can't stop him, but, and again, this was from the boards the other day. I'm sorry, and I have to say this. I usually don't engage in some of the stuff that's on social media, some of the dumbest things I've seen ever. Like, I've said this, I'll debate anything with anybody, but if people think, either team's fan, that Florida just didn't give about Game 4 and trying to win. You have given the best player in the world life. He annihilated you in Game 4. He undressed you in Game 5. And I hate to say this, I think he's gonna take you to the woodshed in Game 6.
And that means there's gonna be a Game 7. And if that happens, it's a coin flip, like you said. So again, we'll find out. Game 6 is Friday night. We'll have a pregame show. Bring the boys back together for that. Have fun again with that. But guys, this has been the Full Press Hockey Podcast. Get it. Subscribe on YouTube, Full Press Hockey Podcast. Get this on iTunes, Spotify, wherever you get your podcasts, up on Podbean as well. I want to thank our sponsor, Betalytics. Again, FPH24 promo code, 25% off monthly and yearly subscriptions. Keep hitting those winners. I've been Jim Biringer, rocking and rolling with my legendary Hall of Fame tag team partner, Bruce Zeman. Again, Full Press Hockey Podcast. Guys, check it out. And we'll be back again for the pregame show. Take care, Bruce. Always a pleasure.
Thanks, Jimmy.
Barry Trotz, Nashville Predators, making sure you're listening to Full Press Hockey Podcast.